Hi, my name's Bryce Burton, and today we're going to be looking at Etude number 1 from Portraits in Rhythm by Anthony Cirone. So this is the first etude of the book, so it's not the most difficult one. There are a couple tricky spots though, so a couple things to keep in mind. I'd say the hardest part about this etude is the dynamics, and then the second hardest thing is the tempo. There's some tricky flam stuff, especially line 7. So let's just look at the beginning. You have this phrase, right? It goes like this. That's kind of the main phrase of this piece. You can see it happens 3 separate times. First on line 1, then on line 6, the second measure, then lastly on line 11. So if you have the study guide, which I'd highly recommend for this book, which talks about each etude, he mentions that this phrase should sound exactly the same each time. So you need to be really careful to get that sounding exactly the same. The fortissimo down to, well, about mezzo forte. And one discrepancy in the study guide that I personally don't do is he says to diminuendo below mezzo forte to make the diminuendo more dramatic. However, most of the people that will be listening to this solo, whether they're judges or teachers or whoever you play this for, they probably won't have read the study guide. So if you go way below mezzo forte and then jump back up to mezzo forte, they're probably going to think that you don't know how to decrescendo properly, because 99% of the time, when you see a decrescendo, you're supposed to decrescendo to that dynamic. So I would actually not do what he says in the study guide and instead just diminuendo right to that mezzo forte dynamic. And then in the last measure in line 1, you need to make sure to start that crescendo right away. So we're going to grow every single note and then end on a fortissimo accent, which should be the loudest note that we play in the piece, right into a subito piano. A subito pianissimo. So this is pretty tricky. Thankfully you have a whole quarter note to get to that subito pianissimo, but one way to practice it is by giving yourself more space and more time to get there. So check this out. I'm going to start on the second line. So I did that. You can practice taking a deep, letting your breath out, giving kind of a sigh. And that'll just help you prepare for that pianissimo. Over time, you can shorten the length of that pause so that you can do it right in time. There we go. Then we have self-explanatory stuff. Make sure that this forte, mezzo forte, and piano are all different. And then on line 4, you want to play this piano not too quiet because you have to diminuendo to 3 pianissimos. So you need to give yourself room to go. If you go here, you're going to have nowhere to go and you're going to be in trouble. So I would give that, make that a nice healthy piano. Line 4. Here's line 4. 1, 2, 3. Here we're going to start the crescendo right away, and it needs to be fast because we're going to fortissimo. Right? And then we have this flam section. So this is tricky because of the tempo of the piece. 132 is relatively fast to play this. So as I say with all of these etudes, if you can't play them at the tempo that's marked, that's okay. Play it slower. Nobody's going to give you any points for going to an audition, playing it super fast, but it's super messy and your time is bad. So if you can play it slowly but well, that is way preferable to playing it fast and sloppy. The way that I'd recommend sticking this is doing the flams all on one hand. So you don't want to alternate. It is possible to alternate, but it doesn't sound as consistent. And I'll give you an example. I'm going to play it first alternating, and then I'll play it the next time keeping the flams on my left hand. So I'd be doing the grace note in my right hand, and the note before in my right hand. So it's just kind of like a little double. So here's alternating from line 7. And I guess I should be a little quieter because it's mezzo forte. And here's all on one hand from line 7. So you can see it's a little bit easier. That's what I'd recommend. Either do it on the right or the left hand. It's going to depend on your strengths and weaknesses. Going on from line 8, again, you have this self-explanatory diminuendo. You know, he says in the study guide that you should get as quiet as possible to make the fortissimo more dramatic. There's no dynamic marked at the end of the diminuendo, so that's fine. You can get as quiet as you want there. Here's from line 8. Right back into fortissimo. Again to pianissimo. Okay, then this section, this is where a lot of students make a mistake. It's only forte and it's only piano. So before we were doing fortissimo and pianissimo, right? 2 Fs and 2 Ps. Now we only have 1 F and 1 P. So it's not that drastic and you don't have to move as much on the drum. This is another area where I disagree with the study guide because he says it's too fast to move on the drum, and when you move that fast on the drum, it sounds weird. The way that modern snare drums are, and you know, just the culture of playing, I think it sounds fine to move on the drum. So if you can do it, I'd recommend moving a little bit. So you're going to play the forte in the middle and the piano slightly towards the edge. But you don't have to go like super far like for a pianissimo. So check this out. Right, and then we're right into the pianissimo. So that's tricky. You need to leave yourself room to go. That's a really hard section. I'd recommend, again, practicing these 2 measures slow and going into the 3rd measure and measure 10, or line 10, sorry. So here's line 10 slowly. So I'm using the drum to my advantage. I'm playing forte, piano, pianissimo, right? And then it's just all the same material until the end. That crescendo and a fortissimo, diminuendo, and a mezzo forte. And then just keep it nice and simple to the end. You don't need to do anything fancy right in time. So I'll go ahead and play it for you one more time. Here's Etude number 1 from Portraits in Rhythm.